Welcome back. You're listening to Hawaii Money Resource. My name is Marko Miushkovic, Senior Partner of Wealth Strategy Partners, also Certified Exit Planner. You are listening to Hawaii Money Resource. Today we have a Business Exit Planning edition of Hawaii Money Resource. And we do have a Business Exit Planning Advisory Board with us in the studio. Let me introduce them again because we have all brain power right here in the studio with us today. Starting with Ethan Lee, Pacific Business Valuation. By the way, Ethan, people can find you at pacificbusinessvaluation.com. That's the website to kind of learn a little bit about your company, but also at 687-0309. That's a phone number. Then we have Charles Zhao, a managing partner of ECA LLP. It's a CPA firm. Charles, what's the best number to reach you guys?
Our general office number, 808-533-4244.
Sorry, I only had a cell phone. I don't think so it's appropriate to give out your cell phone number.
Appreciate it.
And last but not least, we have Scott Settlemeyer, a law firm. Scott, main number 540-2400, right?
Yes, thanks.
540-2400. Okay, perfect. So before the break, we were talking about, Scott was talking about the importance of sitting down and learning your option before you start building your business and not just rushing into it because you have a deal on the table and you want to close as soon as possible. So now we were thinking about just give you a little bit of example, a real life example. We're not going to be mentioning any names. We're not going to be talking about specific, just in general. But the funny thing is, and maybe Ethan you know more about the case, and what I understand, this was the case that you guys start working on after our last year workshop that we did in one of the local clubs, right? Not to disclose the name, right, Charles? Tell me, what was the deal?
We have Charles and I have a mutual client that they got into business. It was similar to what Scott described, how there's the urgency to just get going, right? The business is there, we need to start operating. And so the legal agreements can sometimes be an afterthought. Okay, yeah, we've got to get that formalized, we'll get the operating agreement. And anyway, these folks had attended one of our seminars, and afterward I had a follow-up conversation with them about the importance of the buy-sell agreement, and to do that now while things are going well and the business is thriving and there isn't any disputes or disagreement. And anyway, that to fast forward, that time has come and gone. And
you mean the honeymoon time is gone?
The honeymoon period is gone, and now there's a bit of disagreement, and there is no buy-sell agreement, and so now unfortunately it's into litigation mode, and instead of paying for the oil change, they're now paying for the engine overhaul.
So what do you think was why even though they participated, they spent some time educating themselves what need to be done? Why they didn't do it?
Well, I think it is. It's just the day-to-day. I mean, business owners are so they're so buried in their work. They wear so many hats. They're the main operator. They're the president. They're the CEO. They've got their time demands are just crazy, and so they don't have time to do these things. But again, that's kind of the value proposition that we're sending out, is that come to us, we can help you, we can put the plan together, just come meet with us and we can make life a little bit easier and less stressful.
What do you think, Charles? Why is this happening? And this is just one of the many examples.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Ethan's right. The misconception in this case for the majority owner, the founding member, was that he thought by having a controlling interest that he could in the end decide and make decisions on his own. What he came to find out was that he has a fiduciary responsibility to his partner, and while something may be very clear to him on what is fair and acceptable for his purpose, isn't necessarily how the law is going to go, and now having not had put in place the necessary documents, they're having to litigate it.
So now, instead of spending a little bit of money creating all these operating agreements and buy and sell agreements, now they're going to be spending way more money on attorney fees, on litigations, and not to mention the absence of their presence in the work, in the business, and now they need to focus their mind on something else versus building the business. They need to kind of argue and figure out the way how they're going to get out. So this is just multiplying the effect of loss. How much money is actually lost because they didn't spend a little bit of time and money right up front. What do you think, Scott?
I think that's exactly right. I think folks need to think about business partnerships or joint ventures, similar to a marriage, where they really need to think through, and you can take out the love or the emotion out of it a little bit more when with the business as opposed to a marriage, and you need to really think through, because at some point, unlike hopefully a marriage was going to last forever, business does end. I mean, whether folks retire, folks quit, somebody passes away, or they decide that two partners decide to go their own ways. I think that is very, very likely, not 99% of the time is what's going to happen eventually, and so it really needs to be planned for.
One smart person just told me recently the business ends either by design or by default, right? So eventually that's what's going to happen on the end. Well, for folks out there that are not familiar with the Business Exit Planning Advisory Board, that was the sole purpose of creating this pretty much joint thing between Ethan, Charles, and Scott and myself, like a couple of years ago, just going around and spreading the words among the business owners about the importance of business exit planning. And one of the things that Ethan said earlier, they don't have time. And putting four of us in the room with all of our expertise will take that time and put it on our shoulders to help that business owners actually design and craft very well designed exit plan and prepare well ahead of a time for that exit. So if you're listening to Hawaii Money Resource and you are wondering where to go next, the best thing is to give us a call, 695-2102, 695-2102. If you have any questions, if you're a business owner and you're really stuck in a moment and you really don't know where to go, but you want to eventually get out of the business, give us a call. We'll be more than happy to talk to you and give you some recommendations and suggestions. Going back on the buy and sell agreements, it's many examples. I would say 90% of the people don't have custom built buy and sell agreement, and most of the time they're just using some of the buy and sell agreement that they borrow from the friend or they borrow from the internet or whatever. Buy and sell agreement itself doesn't need to be like what you said, brain damaging earlier. Can be very well crafted in a short period of time. But where should that buy and sell agreement begin? Where should they start with the buy and sell agreement? Does it need to be separate from the operating agreement? Scott?
No, it doesn't. It can be incorporated. In fact, it often is incorporated into an operating agreement for an LLC. For a corporation, yeah, you'd have a separate shareholder buy-sell agreement. But they're very similar in terms, and it's great, again, to have it done up front, but also we shouldn't leave you with the impression that it can't be done later. I mean, oftentimes and many times the businesses will come and need this type of planning when they start to think about it. And again, as long as the partners are getting along relatively well, or even if they're not getting along so well, but they're at least speaking with each other, it's a better time to talk about these things, think through them, and negotiate them, as opposed to a time period where everybody is thrown off the gloves and there's a big fight.
Ethan, how much importance, when you evaluate the businesses, do you look at the buy and sell agreements, and do you incorporate that in valuation, or does it matter for you?
Yeah, no, it definitely matters. If there is a buy-sell agreement, which 95 or more % there isn't, but when there is, it's huge. I mean, that the language in the buy-sell agreement dictates often what we consider in the valuation. For example, we have one recently that was, a litigated one. It was the buy-sell agreement said there's this formula that will produce a price, and if you don't agree on that, then you get an independent business valuation expert to value the business, and if they don't agree on that one, you go get another one.
Right.
And so that's where we were at. There was 2 business valuation experts, but the wording in the buy-sell agreement was such that it prohibited consideration of any future earnings of the business. And in this case, it was sad because the business was very profitable, and all we could consider was basically the assets of the business, treated as if they were just going to sell the assets, but it was a professional service type business, so that the assets were minimal.
Who suffers?
Well, in this case, it was a widow. The husband was a partner, and the widow wanted to get her husband's receive the buyout from her husband's ownership interest, and so she was, unfortunately, the one that was suffering in this case because of the poor wording, the poor, the poor, I guess, planning for the buy-sell agreement.
So let's say that's a case scenario, Scott. What is her options? Is she stuck just because of the poor wording of the buy and sell agreement?
They may very well be. I mean, Hawaii is a state that tends to honor people's contracts. So if the two owners originally agreed to that, that's likely what the court's going to enforce.
What about you, Charles? How much buy and sell agreements are important for you when you doing like a tax audits or when you doing like a tax planning for them?
Well, we see it as an important planning tool, Marco, and to Scott's point, and having a contract that not just having a written contract, but having one that's been vetted with the various consultants and having everyone weigh in. So while it may have legal authority, does it make sense from a financial standpoint? Does it make sense from a valuation standpoint? I think it's important to have the various professionals, which is why we've built this team. And to your point, Marco, having everyone take their eyes and look at it from their technical expertise and weigh in gives a composite answer that serves the client in the optimal way.
Perfect. I appreciate your guys' input. We're going to take another break. You're listening Business Exit Planning, additional Hawaii Money Resource. Today's guests, actually our returning co-host is Ethan Lee from Pacific Business Valuation. We have Charles Al from ECA LLP and Scott Sella from Sellemeyer Law Firm, business attorneys. My name is Marko Miushkovic, Senior Partner of Wealth Strategy Partners, also Certified Exit Planner. We're going to take our break, and once we come back from the break, we're going to talk a little bit more about intellectual property and goodwill. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
I can't believe they would have